thank you for being here this evening. I am Jennifer Fry. I am the Director of Enrollment Services at Ohio State Mansfield. And tonight we're going to be talking all about student financial aid. This is a very big topic here as students and families are entering that time of enrolling in colleges and universities. And so we want to help with as much information as possible as we can. I will be taking care of all the tech issues. So anything that you put in the chat feature, please go ahead and do so. And we will go ahead and get to those questions at the end of the presentation. If you have other comments or if you have individual questions that may be more direct, you can also private chat those to us as well, because we do not want you to put any personal information in the chat feature that may be specific to your direct financial aid questions about your family, but general questions about financial aid, we do welcome. We can always help with more direct questions specific that would require some personal information. We can always set an appointment to handle those at another time. So we do want to protect that information. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Kendra Boggs. She is our financial aid specialist for the campus, and she is going to share with us all the information that will help you as you start your journey with financial aid.
Hello, everyone. Like Jennifer said, my name is Kendra. We're just going to go over some financial aid, kind of a basic, like what do you need to know, who can receive aid, how is aid calculated, the types of financial aid, of course, how to apply for financial aid, and then kind of the steps after, what happens after that. So just diving right in, we'll take a look at what is financial aid. So financial aid is the entire package, all the funds that are put together to assist the students and families to pay for college. Financial aid is available at the federal, state, and institutional level. And colleges generally send these out in the spring. So you'll get your financial aid packages either emailed to you or a letter sent to you that will detail what funds are available for you. So who can receive federal financial aid? FAFSA uses the following criteria, so it's all listed there for you to determine if you're eligible to receive financial aid. So, you have to be a U.S. citizen or an eligible non-citizen, have your high school diploma, be enrolled in a degree-seeking program, have a valid Social Security number. You cannot be in default on previous student loans. This last one is actually no longer valid. I left it on here just to make sure that I mentioned it. And also you will see this question on the FAFSA. So you do want to answer it correctly. But with some of the changes that were made over the last year, you can receive aid even if you had been convicted of possession or sale of illegal drugs. So that will not have an impact on your EFC any longer, but you will see the question on the FAFSA. So I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out to you all. So how is your need calculated? So the cost of attendance, which is what the school will give you, the school will figure out your cost of attendance, minus your expected family contribution is going to equal your financial need. And we'll talk more about what makes up the cost of attendance and what makes up your expected family contribution in a couple slides. But that is how each school is going to determine your financial need. Since the cost of attending schools changes, your cost of attendance is going to vary from school to school. So it is possible that at some schools you're going to qualify for financial need-based or for needs-based programs, and then it may be in another school you will not. So that's something to keep in mind when you're looking at different schools. So to make up that cost of attendance that the school is going to come up with, they're going to take your direct costs, your tuition fees, room and board if you're living on campus, and then your indirect costs, books, supplies, transportation, miscellaneous and personal expenses. And if you're a commuter, that's where your room and board would live. So that's all going to make up your cost of attendance. And then the expected family contribution is a formula that is used from information that is a formula based off information that you put into the FAFSA. So your EFC is going to stay the same no matter where you attend college. What does change is that cost of attendance, as I had mentioned. The the EFC also measures like the family strength, their financial strength, and their maybe not so much their willingness to pay or to help pay for school, but what is determined as their ability or the expectation that they will pay some. One thing to keep in mind is that your expected family contribution is not a direct correlation to dollar amount. So just because your expected family contribution is $5,000, that doesn't mean you're paying $5,000 necessarily for school. That just helps the school to determine your financial need and, as I said, the family strength, financial strength. So you could be awarded two different types of aid, two different types of financial aid. Gift aid would be, the good aid, the aid you want. That's aid that does not need to be repaid. So what makes up gift aid are your scholarships, whether they're merit-based or needs-based, and your grants. So grants are available at the federal level, the Pell Grant, at the state level, and at the institutional level. So OSU has some really nice grants, the President's Affordability Grant and the Buckeye Affordability Grant. Buckeye Affordability is a tuition gap filler. So if you are Pell eligible and meet some other criteria, that fills that in. Another local school, NC State, has the tuition freedom. So there are some really good programs available in Richland County for students looking to help offset the cost of college. Self-help aid is aid that generally needs to be repaid, with the exception of federal work study. You will not repay federal work study. You'll get a job, likely on campus, and work. It's just the bucket that money is paid to you comes from federal work study dollars. So you are earning that money. You're not going to need to repay that. And in fact, you're going to enter that on the FAFSA so they know, so the FAFSA knows this is money you were earned at a work study job. So it's not held against you. Other types of self-help aid are your loans. Your direct subsidized loan does not accrue interest while you're in school, but your direct subsidized loan will not accrue interest while you're in school. However, your unsub loan will. Another option is the Parent Plus loan. Again, completely optional. That loan would be in the parent's name and the parent's responsibility to repay that. Okay, so we talked about gift aid and that how wonderful it is, not to repay it. So my goal or your goal should be to have as much gift aid as possible so that you graduate college with as little debt as you have, as you can. Many community foundations offer scholarships. We're blessed here in Richland County to have the Richland County Foundation. They have some wonderful scholarships. I always encourage students to apply their social clubs. If you have a parent or a grandparent who belongs to Eagles, American Legion, they often have scholarships. Local banks, credit unions, and other businesses will have scholarships available. Your school, athletic boosters, music boosters, they all typically have scholarships. And if you ever have a question, talk to your guidance counselor at your high schools. Oftentimes on the websites, they'll have scholarships listed that you can, and links to apply. Sometimes, financial aid offices at schools you're interested will have information about scholarships. I know I get a few throughout the year. So reach out, search, look for those scholarship opportunities and make sure you apply. And then, so that's a little bit about the local scholarships. So national scholarship search engines are a few listed here. One thing I would recommend if you're going to go in and register at any of these sites, just to create a dummy email so that all the spam goes there and not to your personal email address. Do that. Just use some common sense, use some be picky about what you apply for. If you ever run across a scholarship that seems like, I don't know, they're asking for a lot of information, or, don't ever give your social security number out. Don't ever pay to apply for a scholarship. Just really use some discretion in what you're doing there. But there are some really good national scholarships. Coca-Cola has a national scholarship. Actually, Sally Mae has a scholarship available for first gen students that is a decent scholarship. So definitely do some research. If you spend, an hour on a weeknight or even, on a Sunday afternoon looking for scholarships and you apply for 10, that afternoon and you receive $1,000, you're not, you're going to be hard pressed to find a job that's going to pay you $1,000 an hour that you just earned. So definitely research and spend some time applying for those scholarships. Another good tool to use when you're comparing scholars or comparing schools is this net price calculator. So this is going to give you an estimated cost of attendance and an estimated amount of financial aid. You just simply want to search net price calculator, the name of the institution, it should come up for you. If you wait until after you've completed your FAFSA and you know what your EFC is, you'll get results that are probably a little more accurate, but you certainly can do it without having completed that FAFSA yet. Now we're going to talk about getting that FAFSA completed and get to that kind of the nitty gritty of it all. So the FAFSA has opened. It opened on October 1st. And watch your school's priority deadlines. OSU's priority deadline is February 1st. Different schools are going to have different priority deadlines, but you definitely want to make sure you apply or that you complete the FAFSA before that priority deadline. You'll still be able to get Pell and maybe some other state grants if you're past that deadline. State grant would be iffy, but you could lose that on that institutional aid if you apply or if you do the FAFSA after the deadline, and you don't want to leave money on the table. So definitely just get that FAFSA done in as quickly as possible. And the FAFSA will need to be completed each year. There is an app. So if you don't have access to a desktop or a laptop and you want to be able to complete the FAFSA, you can go to the App Store and download the app, complete the FAFSA that way. You can do everything to get the FAFSA completed on that app, with the exception of making corrections. So if you realize you've made an error, you would have to go find a computer or get on the web browser to fix the error. But other than that, you can use the app. So there are 5 steps to completing this FAFSA. Step 1 is to create your FSA ID and password. You will need one. A parent will need one. You're going to gather up your materials, sit down and fill the FAFSA out, sign and submit, and then follow up. So the first thing we're going to do is create that FSA ID. So in order to do that, you're going to need the following information. So personal name or personal information, your date of birth, social security number, definitely use a non-school email address. So after you've graduated, you're going to want to, after you've graduated high school, you're not going to have access to that email. And this FSA and ID and password is yours for life. So you want to make sure that you have access to it. You're going to set recovery information, mobile phone, email, so that you can recover your account if you need to, and set your communication options. So you can be select email or mail. You'll verify that contact information. And then, as I said, both the parents and the students going to need an ID. So our next step this is to gather the material. So social security cards, you want your parents with you, or a guardian, and you also want to set aside some time where you can complete this in maybe 45 minutes. If you haven't created your FSA ID, if you had created it prior, maybe you could get by with a little less time, but you definitely want to be able to sit down together and go through the FAFSA. So personal information that you're going to need is listed here. One thing to remember is that the FSA ID can only be associated with one mobile phone and one email. So parents, don't create your child's, or student, don't create your parents, and use your own personal emails, because that's going to cause problems. So one email address per FSA ID. And then as you gather this information, you want to make sure you each have your own separate email addresses. Driver's license or ID number is optional, but if you have it, you can put that in there. Selective service registration is still on the FAFSA. However, it's no longer required to be registered in order to receive federal financial aid. Again, I just left this on here because you are going to run into that question on the FAFSA, and it is still the law. So male students would have to still register, and schools are going to use that to charge out-of-state or in-state tuition. So I still wanted to make a note of it because you will see it, but it is no longer a requirement, and actually the question will be going away in a couple years or next aid year. Now, most students are going to be a dependent student. There are going to be some students who are going to be an independent student. So there are some dependency questions on the FAFSA. They are these questions here. If you say yes to any of these questions, you're going to be an independent student. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but there are dependency questions on the FAFSA to determine what type of student you're going to be. If you are in a situation where you're living with, a grandparent or a foster parent, aunt, uncle, any of that situation, those, although they are taking care of you, are not considered parents on the FAFSA unless you have been legally adopted. So in this situation, you would be likely considered an independent student, and perhaps either you're going to fill out the special circumstances form or possibly dependency appeal. So those are things, if this is your situation where you're going to want to work with the financial aid department of the university you plan to attend. Again, just a little chart to follow to kind of help you determine what type of student you are. One thing to remember that does happen kind of often is students will admit their step parent on the FAFSA. But if your parent is remarried, you will have to include your step parent. So our next step is fill in the FAFSA out. So 10 campuses, so 10 schools. You can send that to. I would say if you have a school that you're not 100% sure you want to apply for, go ahead and add it. I mean, you can add 10. You could actually add more if you really, really wanted to. There's a way to do that, but 10 per submission. And then if you can use the data retrieval tool, highly recommend. It's a wonderful tool. We'll talk about more about that, but you're going to enter your parent information. So Social Security number, date of birth, tax information. This is where the data retrieval tool comes in handy. So if you can use that tool, that imports all that information from the IRS, puts it exactly where it needs to go, and the exact numbers. So you don't have to worry about adding a digit, transposing digits, or anything like that. It's all going to come in, flow right in. So depending upon the filing status is whether or not that data retrieval tool is going to work for you. So parents, if you're married filing separately, unfortunately, you won't be able to use it. But married filing joint, head of household, single, those statuses, you should be able to link right in and pull that information in. There'll be questions about the means tested benefit, any untaxed income, net worth of businesses, farms, net worth of assets. If you're not sure, what do I include? There are question marks at the end of the questions on the FAFSA that you can click on, and it will tell you what to include. So, you don't include your private residence. You don't include, your 401k, but it'll help you to determine that. And if you're not sure, you can always, like I said, click that question. If that doesn't answer your questions for you, there is a chat function in FAFSA that you can use. And also you can always call, here. Yeah, I'd love for you guys to call me and I can answer questions for you, but there are some helpful tools built into the FAFSA to kind of help you answer those questions. One thing that's going to be a little trickier this year is if you're in a situation where you received the enhanced unemployment benefits, filed the FAFSA before March 11th, and used the data retrieval tool, your AGI is not going to be quite right because the IRS or a law passed in March about not including up to like $10,200 of income, of unemployment income. So if that is your specific situation, you're definitely going to want to stay in touch with the financial aid office of the institution you plan to attend. Right now, the guidance is to use professional judgment to correct those FAFSAs. So definitely keep in touch if your family is in that situation. So part 4, you're going to use the student financial information. pretty much the same thing as the parents. So untaxed income, net worth of business and farms, assets. Remember, businesses and farms net worth, if it's a family farm, you have under 100 employees, you don't include it. Again, it'll spell that out on that question. So, just read the questions thoroughly and maybe even out loud sometimes, just to make sure you're hitting all the right, getting all that right information in there. Again, you can use the data retrieval tool for the student. I can't say enough about using the data retrieval tool. It just makes everything so much easier. Now you're ready to sign and submit. So your FSA ID is your electronic signature. So you just put that back in there, sign, submit, it goes to the schools you selected. You do have the option of printing it out and mailing in a signature page. However, it will take a lot longer to get to schools. The FAFSA would take a lot longer to get to schools. And if you're applying, right up to that priority deadline, you really don't, want to do that. The electronic signature is just such a time saving, and then you don't have to worry about mailing or forgetting or anything like that. So the FAFSA has to be signed by a parent and the student in order for your aid to be determined. So just make sure you get that signature on there. So we talk a little bit about some of the frequent errors that students and families make that I see sometimes come through. Filing the wrong FAFSA year is a big one. So you want to make sure you do the 22, 23. Failing to use the student's legal name. So sometimes kids will go by their middle name or something like that. So, they don't think about it and they're filling out their FAFSA and they just, put their middle name down there. Missing the deadline. So you missing out of institutional aid because you missed a deadline. Transposing digits or inserting extra digits. That happens quite often. So if you're entering the information yourself, just double check that you've entered the correct information. Incorrect social security numbers, date of birth, that sometimes can be because of transposing digits as well. Submitting the parents wrong information or not including step parent, which I mentioned that happens often. Not either underreporting untaxed income or overreporting untaxed income because it shouldn't have been on there. Incorrectly reporting household size, or again, either underreporting or overreporting investment net worth because maybe you included your 401k and shouldn't have, or you included the value of your home and shouldn't have. So definitely watch for these things. And if you have questions, you're not sure, ask either the chat, email, call a financial aid officer, reach out to someone to get the answers that you need to make sure that your FAFSA is correct. And then you're going to follow up. So you're going to get an email after you complete the FAFSA, a student aid report. Well, if you chose email, otherwise it's going to come in the mail. But it's going to say what your EFC is. It'll give you kind of an idea of what you're eligible for, whether you're Pell eligible or not. And you may get an email from one of the institutions that you're looking at or the institution you're looking at attending saying that you were selected for verification. So verification is kind of the financial aid world's audit, so to speak. So about 22% of FAFSAs are selected for verification by the U.S. Department of Education. And institutions can also request verification. Just watch for your email. If they ask for additional documentation, just make sure you get it to the institution as quickly as possible. There are due dates, and then along the lines with that institutional aid, if you don't get that documentation in before the due date, you may lose eligibility for that. So definitely make sure that you get that. Some of the things they may ask for is called the dependent student parent verification or independent student verification. That essentially is just verifying household size. Federal tax return transcript or federal tax return. This is where using that data retrieval tool could cut down on this verification because that information is going to be inputted directly from the IRS. W-2s, verification of non-filing letter. So a dependent student wouldn't have this, but if an independent student didn't file taxes at all for that tax year, they may be asked to get confirmation from the IRS that they did not work and were not required to file taxes. Same with a parent. So these are some things that they could ask for verification. So definitely just keep that in mind, that it is a possibility you could be selected for verification. Another thing to keep in mind is what could cause your aid to change. So if you drop or withdraw from a class, that could cause your aid to change. Some aid is going to require that you maintain full-time enrollment. If you are not at full-time enrollment and you add a class, that may cause some changes. If you fail a class, that could have an impact on your financial aid. So all schools have to follow guidelines for satisfactory academic progress, and that requires that you pass 67% of your attempted courses and that you maintain a GPA of 2.0. There's another element of SAP, which is maximum time frame, and that means that you complete your degree in a timely manner. So it's 150% of the needed credit hours, but that kind of goes along with that completion rate, making sure that you are moving through your coursework in a timely fashion. Another thing that could change your aid is household income changes, especially with COVID and the way things are now. Many families have seen an impact in their household income, so job losses or things of that nature. So we are doing prior year for this FAFSA. So if your income has significantly changed, that is a situation where you want to reach out to the financial aid office of the campus you intend to attend to discuss options there. You may be looking at filing an EFC appeal or something along those lines. I included this little cost comparison worksheet for y'all. If you would like a copy of it, definitely email us and we can get that to you. Just something to use to kind of look at colleges, compare financial aid packages, compare tuition cost. One thing I always tell students is you can't really compare financial aid packages directly with each other, just because the cost of attendance varies. So just because school X is giving you $2,000 and school Y is only giving you $500, maybe school Y has a much lower cost of attendance and it all actually ends up being cheaper than what school X is going to give you. So you definitely want to sit down and compare everything side by side. And also don't compare your financial aid packages or your, what you have with your friends, because everybody's situation is different. There's so much private personal information that goes in the FAFSA that it's really hard to make a comparison like that. So just real quick, looking at kind of a quick timeline to follow up with how things over the next year are going to go for students. October to February, this is where you want to complete that FAFSA, complete college applications, watch for priority deadlines for each institution that you're going to apply for, search out those external scholarships, complete institutional scholarship applications, get working on that stuff, write your essays, keep a hold of them. A lot of the prompts are going to be similar. Maybe you tweak a little bit here and there, but save those essays, copy and paste, do the tweaks that you need to do, but make sure you really do spend some time searching out those scholarships. It really is going to be time well spent if you're able to maybe even just your first year not take out a student loan or just a minimal loan. January to April, you're going to start getting your award letters, you're going to start getting your financial aid packages, you're going to continue to apply for external scholarships, but you want to start reviewing, comparing, maybe take some schools off the list, and probably you'll be adding some schools to the list. So just really kind of take a look at getting, choices narrowed down, getting those scholarship applications in. May, most schools are going to have a deadline of May 1st to pay the acceptance fees, and most acceptance fees are going to be non-refundable. So definitely by May, you should have made your decision, get that acceptance fee paid, and kind of start gearing up for orientation in the summer. So June, July, orientation, finalize your housing plans, complete the loan process if you're going to be using student loans, sign up for any payment plans if they're available. If you're planning to attend OSU, and this is not really financial aid related, but I always say this in my presentations because this is probably one of the biggest questions I was asked over the summer. Definitely get that acceptance fee paid in May, maybe even a little sooner, because they send out the email for the football tickets around June 1. And I have to honestly say that was one of the biggest questions I was asked all summer long. Can I get football tickets? When can I buy football tickets? So if you want to be included in that email, pay your acceptance fee by May 1 so that you are included. Then August, September, you're going to pay your balance, you're going to move in, you're going to start class, and it's going to be just an exciting new world for you. And it'll just be a lot of maybe stress, but a lot of fun. If you have any questions, my information is there, admissions is there. We'd be happy to hear from you. If you have questions completing the FAFSA, even if you don't think you're going to go to Ohio State Mansfield, call me. I do not mind at all. We can go over the FAFSA. We can go over, I always keep a paper copy of it actually at my desk. So I can, if a parent says, I'm stuck on question 23, I can look to see what question 23 is. So typically, we can get through the questions in a pretty timely manner. So do we have any questions in the chat, Jennifer?
At this time, I do not have any questions in the chat. I did put a link to that worksheet if it should work on that one. That is a link we've used before for people, so you can get that worksheet that you displayed. I believe if people do have questions and they also want to, instead of typing them out and want to unmute themselves, you can do that at this moment as well.
Kendra, you did a really good job.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate it. It's a good refresher.
There'll be a lot of changes coming in the next couple years, so definitely we'll want to stay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've been reading on some of them,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah.
Just have to see what they look like, but yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for being here, and this recording will be available and will be sent out from the coalition that is sponsoring this series in regards to prepping for college and all the steps throughout the college search. So please continue to be watching for future events as they may happen. If you have questions, as you see in that contact information, please feel free to reach out. We're always here to help with any questions that come up. We know it's a big process, and that's what we're here to help for. So thank you, everyone, and you all have a great evening.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it, ladies.